Tonight, the deciding vote in Alabama, the clock ticks on dreamers, and the dark lord of net neutrality.
I'm a big fan of Judge Judy, absolutely.
More than 30 Democratic senators are now calling on Senator Al Franken to resign after multiple women have accused him of sexual misconduct. Franken, who has apologized for his actions and said he remembers certain encounters differently, is expected to make an announcement tomorrow. If he does resign, Minnesota's Democratic governor would appoint someone to the seat, but there would still be an election for it in November of 2018. The person elected would serve until the end of Franken's term in 2021. Thousands of people have been forced to evacuate as yet another series of wildfires rages across Southern California. Strong winds have made it difficult for firefighters to contain the blazes, which have burned more than 80,000 acres. 2 of the 3 fires are not contained at all, and only 5% of the third is under control. A new fire started this morning, forcing the closure of the 405 freeway and threatening the Getty Center. Brain abnormalities have been detected in the victims of the mysterious attacks on the U.S. Embassy in Cuba, according to a report by the Associated Press. Doctors treating the 24 Americans who were injured say the attacks led to observable changes in their brains, specifically to the white matter tracts that facilitate brain communication. Today, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said he's, quote, convinced these were targeted attacks, but also said it's unclear who's behind them. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn told a business associate that sanctions against Russia would be ripped up by the Trump administration as one of its first acts, according to a whistleblower who contacted the office of Representative Elijah Cummings. The source also said that on Trump's inauguration day, Flynn texted the associate to say that a lucrative project to build nuclear power plants in the Middle East with Russian partners was, quote, good to go. Cummings, a Maryland Democrat, shared the information in a letter to House Oversight Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy. A day after the International Olympic Committee banned Russia from the 2018 Winter Games for doping, President Vladimir Putin said the country would not stop its athletes from competing as neutral Olympians. But Putin also continued to deny allegations of state-sponsored doping, despite multiple investigations concluding otherwise.
Нашим олимпийцам запрещено выступать под российским флагом и российским символиком. Если нет государственной поддержки, ну, наказывайте тогда тех, кто в этом виноват.
Next Tuesday, Alabama Democrats will have their best shot at a statewide win in more than a decade, when former U.S. Attorney Doug Jones faces off against accused pedophile Roy Moore in a special election to fill Jeff Sessions' Senate seat. But Jones is hardly a shoo-in. He'll need African Americans, who make up more than 1 in 4 of the state's registered voters, to turn out en masse.
The Christmas parade in Selma, Alabama this year was a political affair. Doug Jones didn't miss the historical significance of the setting.
Whenever I come to Selma, I feel a special relationship with this city because of the civil rights heritage here.
Jones is a former U.S. attorney. He prosecuted the KKK members involved in the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing that killed 4 black girls in the 1960s. The case is his greatest professional achievement and a centerpiece of his campaign.
We were able to convict 2 old Klansmen for the murder of those 4 children.
We gotta vote. We're not gonna die. Vote to live. Vote to live. Vote to live.
Faya Rose Touré is a longtime civil rights activist from Selma who's working to get out the black vote. She took us to a part of Selma where parades and politicians don't usually go.
This part of Selma is called East Selma. A major part of Selma, it looks like this.
Yeah.
And so many of our elected officials You know, like when I was growing up, my mama said, put on your best clothes, show the best part of the house.
Right.
So politicians, unfortunately, want to show the best of Selma. I understand that. But what they don't realize is if people don't see the poverty, they can't respond to it.
Being ignored isn't new to the residents of East Selma, and it's made them cynical about the political process.
Yeah, it is.
You plan to vote?
Yeah.
Okay, well, do you think most people in the neighborhood would vote? Tell the truth.
No.
That
Most of
question.
them just don't want to be bothered.
And they don't want to be bothered because they don't see the conditions of their lives changing.
There's no jobs, there's nothing to do. I mean, so basically only thing they did was pave these streets. Playgrounds closed down. I mean, you just look at the neighborhood, it's just going down.
Jones is doing your traditional black voter outreach, visiting some African-American churches and neighborhoods, appearing with prominent community leaders like Randall Woodfin, Birmingham's popular new mayor.
Y'all give it up for Doug Jones.
But that's the crux of Jones's problem. Democrats have done this type of campaigning for decades, and many black voters don't know what makes Doug Jones different from the generation of Democrats that preceded him.
Are you going to vote for Doug Jones or Roy Moore?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Man, listen, I love to vote, and I would vote anybody. I ain't going to vote for neither one. I don't know no Doug Jones. That man ain't came right here and spoke to us, to the people. We the people. See, we on that old 1960 where you got to get out and vote. We have done that, man. Ain't no changes.
When the last time you voted, man?
Man, I just voted for the mayor election, sir.
Why did people vote for him, but nobody's excited about Doug Jones?
Why would about Doug Jones? Oh no, they got answers for that. Give answers. I don't hear about talking.
Because Roy Moore got found out here free.
I don't hear about Doug Jones.
No, but see what really.
Jones has placed some ads in black media, but Faya says they're not enough, and she thinks that's intentional.
I think the reason why they don't advertise on black radio and black newspapers is they don't want to turn off white voters.
The fear there is that if you focus too much on black voters, white Republicans that might be up for grabs could tune out.
You have the mentality here in Alabama and throughout that black people deserve where we are, and that unspoken belief that we are the inferior race permeates politics, education, and that is a real devastating problem that we face.
And Jones needs moderate white Republicans turned off by Roy Moore to win. So while he has proposals for criminal justice reform and speaks up about civil rights,
My whole career has been about equality and justice.
he also aired this ad,
3 times Colonel William Oates of Alabama led the Confederate forces
which equated Confederate and Union soldiers.
2 sides believing so strongly in their cause that they were willing to die for it.
And he's cautious when talking about race.
Doug, you talk about yourself as a unifier who's dealing with these kitchen table issues, but don't black and white Alabamians face different issues?
Of course they do. Of course they do. But
you see those?
Of course they do. But they also face more issues in common. They face issues of healthcare. They face issues of education. They face issues of jobs. All of that. Now they do it. No. Okay. They do it in varying degrees, for sure. Obviously, the unemployment here in the Black Belt is greater than it is in the city of Birmingham. So we can address those issues. But the core issues are the things that we have in common. And that's what we're stressing. So I don't think for questions like that, those are the divisive kind of questions that we don't need to have in Alabama. We don't need to have the questions about that.
People respond to issues that affect their lives. So you just can't walk up to a house and say, oh, are you gonna vote for Doug Jones? Who in the heck is Doug Jones? Of course, I know who Doug Jones is. I know that he prosecuted the Klansmen for killing those poor precious girls. But that's not enough to make people want to vote for him. What are you gonna do for me now?
In September, the Trump administration officially canceled the DACA program, an Obama-era policy that protects young undocumented immigrants, also known as Dreamers, from deportation. Trump says he wants legal status for Dreamers.
We love the Dreamers. We love everybody. Thank you very much.
He also says Congress needs to solve the problem, not the White House. But time is running out to come up with protections that would allow Dreamers to stay in the U.S.
Here's the story with the DREAM Act in Congress. There are a lot of Republicans who actually want to pass it, but they say they can't unless the bill also includes some kind of new immigration enforcement money and/or border protections. You know, like a wall. Meanwhile, Democrats are demanding a so-called clean DREAM Act. They don't want funding for an anti-immigration crackdown in a bill that's supposed to show that America is welcoming to immigrants. Usually Democrats don't matter that much in this Congress. But right now they do, because there just aren't enough pro-DREAM Republicans to pass a bill without Democratic votes. And currently, Republicans can't get those Democratic votes without a clean DREAM Act. Stuck in the middle of all this are the actual Dreamers. They were on the Hill today, and a bunch of them got arrested on the Capitol steps in an act of civil disobedience. Yesterday, 34 House Republicans signed a letter saying they want to do something to give the Dreamers legal protections. We're told they're very close to a bill, but we don't know what's in it. They also don't seem to be interested in using the leverage that they might have to force the rest of the Republican Party into voting for this by, for example, standing in the way of this week's must-pass government spending bill. Scott Taylor is one of the guys who wrote that letter.
Right now, this is it's not a threat. It is a statement at the moment that we need to get this done, and we should get it done. In my opinion, a separate bill shouldn't be in a spending bill. It should just be one that's germane, that has the security in it, has the disincentives for to stop illegal immigration further, but also deals with this population.
He really wants to do something about the DREAM Act, but he can't do what the Democrats want him to do.
There won't be a clean DREAM Act. That's not going to happen to be able to get enough Republican support. There has to be some security in there. There has to be some disincentives to have further illegal immigration. But it is important that we take care of this population, and I believe that our party should lead on it.
Republicans like Taylor might have some unlikely allies in this argument over a clean DREAM Act. Dreamers. Mary Elena Incapié is one of the organizers of today's mass arrests. Like other organizers, she told us she's prepared to accept a bill that does more than just a clean dream.
As advocates, our responsibility is to advocate for our communities. Now, when the Democrats and Republicans get together to negotiate over the details will matter, the policy matters. But at the end of the day, we believe that even people like Taylor and Ryan and McConnell can do the right thing and ensure that a DREAM Act passes before the end of the year.
So when you see Dreamers on Capitol Hill like they are today, they're here to change Democratic minds, not just Republican ones.
I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. While previous presidents have made this a major campaign promise, they failed to deliver. Today, I am delivering.
Ever since Congress first passed the Jerusalem Embassy Act in 1995, American presidents have used a waiver to carefully avoid the law's aim of getting the U.S. to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Now, President Trump has upended a standard operating procedure of American foreign policy in the Middle East. Trump emphasized today that he's still committed to the peace process between Israel and Palestine, and that he's open to a two-state solution. But the Jerusalem Declaration drew predictable reactions from each side.
إن هذه الإجراءات المستنكرة والمرفوضة تشكل تقويضاً متعمداً لجميع الجهود المبذولة من أجل تحقيق السلام.
The president's decision is an important step towards peace, for there is no peace that doesn't include Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel.
In Jerusalem, it's just beginning to sink in. Seb Walker has more.
Two flags projected symbolically onto the wall of Jerusalem's Old City by the Israeli-run municipal authority shortly before President Trump took to the airwaves. His speech was a historic slap in the face to Palestinian residents of this disputed city. But for the moment, at least, their immediate reaction to the news has been muted. Mohammed Abu Abed has lived in Jerusalem all his life, and he's witnessed major setbacks for the Palestinian cause.
I don't look for future. It's dark. I'm just day.
But what do you tell your children? What do you
I
say
don't
to them?
tell him anything. I don't speak with my children with politica. Because we was here, we hear about peace with the Jewish before Arafat and Rabin. They two die and there is no peace in the area. Maybe we die and keep it now, like you see.
Instead of taking to the streets, Jerusalem's Palestinians gathered in their usual places to hear Trump's speech. Siam Cafe has been here for 140 years, owned by the same family for 4 generations. Musa Siam inherited the place when his father died. After years of having his rights squeezed by Israeli authorities, he's afraid this time around, Palestinian businesses could be driven out of the old city.
على البلدية على الدخان ولو بقول لك لا ممنوع هذا بقول لي ممنوع جوا لازم برا.
Trump's speech was carried live at primetime here, and it started to stir emotions.
أنت مهاجر غير شرعي في أمريكا وهدول برضو مستوطنين مهاجرين غير شرعيين بفلسطين. تفو عليك.
Bassem al-Kadumi is 74 years old. Another lifelong Jerusalem resident, he gave a glimpse into feelings of betrayal that are sure to be expressed in the coming days.
اجتمع مع كل زعماء المسلمين وزعماء الدول العربية ورموا حالهم بحضنهم وأعطوه 470 مليار دولار ورمينا على أمل إنه يعطينا السلام. حكم علينا بالإعدام على الشعب الفلسطيني بكامل. فإحنا برضه ما كناش نتوقع من أمريكا أكثر من هيك.
Which Trump-appointed government official do celebrities hate most? The competition is stiff, but it just might be Ajit Pai, the mild-mannered 44-year-old chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, who's provoked the Twitter ire of everyone from Cher and Alyssa Milano to John Oliver.
There are some things about him that you should really know. He's a former lawyer for Verizon, and despite being a smart man, he sure loves to play dumb.
That's because Pai is promising to repeal net neutrality regulations, the 2015 rules designed to ensure that internet providers treat all internet data equally. Next week, the FCC will vote on the proposal, and in all likelihood, Pai will get his way.
Hey, Ajit.
Pai. Nice to meet you.
Nice
This is Chairman Pai? Ajit?
Ajit is fine.
Ajit's
yes.
fine?
I've been called plenty of the 4-letter words, but Ajit is, I can work with that.
You're a fan of Judge Judy.
I do, yes. It's
Why? Could you explain this to me?
Oh, she's great. She just dispenses this homespun wisdom and resolves actual cases. And my mom and I have been big fans since the 90s. Yeah, it's just great. It's, yeah.
You should be impeached.
Pai's Middle America sensibilities come from having grown up in Middle America. He's the lawyer's son of Indian immigrant doctors who moved to the small town of Parsons, Kansas, and still live there.
You're making some changes, and it's causing a bit of controversy.
So I hear.
Yeah, a little bit of upset. For those who don't know what net neutrality is, if I were to define it based on what your critics say, it would be something like this. Freedom on the internet is now in jeopardy because we're handing over control of the internet to a very few, very large corporations. You know, people can see what the companies want them to see and can't see what the companies don't want them to see. Is that a fair assessment, you think?
I don't think it is for a couple of different reasons. Number one, previous to 2015, we had a free and open internet, and we didn't see that type of conduct happening. Secondly, the concept itself is so amorphous. I mean, it's essentially changed over the years into essentially whatever people want to read into it. And that's why I think you see some of these hyperbolic reactions.
But it's not hyperbolic for businesses that survive, and some who make a killing, on an internet model where all content providers pay the same price, no matter how much data they use.
The argument on their side is we should be able to charge anybody anything. We're investing. And the problem is cable is nearly a monopoly. Okay, if cable had a lot of competition, it probably wouldn't be a problem.
Netflix. Do you watch Netflix?
I do.
Okay. I assume they oppose the rollback of net neutrality regulations.
Correct, yeah.
Why?
Well, I think they argue that they don't want to have internet service providers potentially threatening their ability to have their customers stream content.
Are they just making this up? I mean, it just strikes me that so many of these people are so upset about it, and the volume and the vitriol is so strong that it can't just be for nothing, can it?
Volume and vitriol are not substitutes for actual arguments. And if you look at the facts in the record with good faith, I think that people will recognize that these kinds of hyperbolic fears never materialized prior to 2015. But, I will say, there's a but. Going forward, we recognize that there is a risk here. We don't simply say, hands off, we're out of the business of regulating, period.
I'm gonna read a tweet to you. From Keith Olbermann, former television host from MSNBC, a tweet to you. You will go down in history as one of the destroyers of free speech, a free press, and the First Amendment. To hell with you and your fellow fascists.
Wow.
What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, obviously coming from somebody who defends the right of people to have different points of view, I think I give it a lot of credence.
I mean, everyone says this is a free speech issue. Ajit Pai is the destroyer of free speech.
It's very odd to say that getting the government out of the business of regulating the internet is somehow destroying free speech, point number one. Point number two, a lot of the people who are saying things like that, and I would include that tweet among them, are the last to defend the pluralistic nature of American discourse.
But the predictably snarky Twitter discourse has given way to more serious threats.
Has it all been worth it in the sense that this has really affected your life?
It's not been easy. I've been advised by law enforcement not to disclose too many details about what's going on, but I think what has been publicly reported is that there have been threats against me and my wife and my kids, including in our neighborhood, and it's not pleasant.
They're racist insults.
Oh, absolutely. It's, I mean, people on both sides. Some people say, go back to India or wherever it is you came from. I get those regularly.
Kansas, but that's where you're from. But it's on both sides. People saying,
yeah, he's not a real Indian American. The Indian community disavows him. He's just a sellout and that sort of stuff. And look, to me, as I said, I understand that public policy is always fraught with passion. My perhaps naive hope is that we still reclaim some part of the public square where people can disagree agreeably. If you look at the online discourse, it's obviously less focused on the facts and more focused on how many zings can I get in 280 characters.
Do you worry that the president is not leading by example on this?
I mean, I don't make any comments about the president's Twitter feed or whatever. That's for other people to decide.
He does all the things you just described.
That's some people can have that argument, and I'm focused on, again, this proceeding and generally speaking, trying to conduct ourselves based on the facts and the law.
So this is our brioche vodka. Here we take real brioche and we mix it with alcohol and then we distill off the essence of it.
Why did you decide the world needs a vodka that tastes like brioche?
Well, it's far from clear the world does, but a lot of flavors are soluble in water, others are only soluble in oil. Alcohol can pick up some of both, so we thought that with alcohol we might actually be able to make a bread-flavored drink. So here we go.
Cheers. It's really, really good.
Nathan Myhrvold's wearing a white jacket, but he's no professional chef. He's a science prodigy who started college at 14, worked with Stephen Hawking, and later made a fortune as CTO of Microsoft. In 2000, he co-founded Intellectual Ventures, a company known for both their notorious patent trolling and using science to solve world problems. But he's picked up an expensive hobby, investing his millions into cooking and cookbooks.
So what did you borrow from the lab that you brought into here?
Many of these pieces of equipment are dedicated lab equipment that I decided to use for cooking. This is a centrifuge. This is one of the pieces of equipment that actually used to be in my house.
Wait, it used to be in your house?
Oh, yeah.
Where was it, next to the washing machine?
No. That was totally different room than the washer.
So do you feel like you're more of a scientist or more of a chef?
Scientists have to be very observant and they have to keep track of their experiments and what works. Well, actually, chefs do a lot of that. The place where they're different is that in science, the quest to understand can take you very far away from your original goal. Whereas generally, if the chef is cooking dinner tonight, you'd like them to cook dinner tonight, not just say, oh, I got really obsessed about the molecular structure and so sorry there's no dinner.
But you did a little bit of that to get the books.
We are all about rabbit holes. It's a miracle we ever found our way back out, actually.
Myhrvold self-published a pricey 6-volume, 2,400-page cookbook, Modernist Cuisine, in 2011. It was a critical success, although he won't disclose how many copies of the book were actually sold. Now Myhrvold's put out another culinary tome, this time with French laundry chef Francisco Migoya, all about bread. What is the definition of modernist bread?
Well, there's no strict definition, but what we do in the book is try to use science and lots of experiments to understand really what are the right techniques of bread making. We don't believe the best bread in the world all occurred in the past. No, the golden age of bread is now.
Myhrvold and his 22-person team spent 4 years obsessively baking for the book, over 36,000 loaves.
This is our master sourdough. It's easy to make. It has, look how, you can see how shiny,
really shiny
the crumb is. I think it tastes really good.
What makes it scientifically the master as opposed to just your subjective opinion?
My book, sourdough. My subjective opinion. And our team, more generally.
The book is pretty comprehensive, even recreating bread the ancient Romans ate in Pompeii. But even the most impassioned foodies have raised their eyebrows about the book's enormous price tag. Who's the cookbook for? Because it's $625. You know, who's buying a cookbook that's expensive?
Look, if you just want a recipe to tell you do this, there's plenty of recipe books that you can buy that I can't compete with. But if you care about the why, if you care about the history, if you care about those other things, maybe I have a proposition.
Myhrvold said he's considering desserts or non-Western cuisines for his next pricey cookbook. You're a really smart guy. You have a lot of resources at your disposal. In a room or those rooms over there, you're trying to cure malaria. Over here, you're trying to work out the best chocolate cherry dough. Do you see there as being equal weight in doing both?
Well, they each have different kinds of impact. I don't want to say, well, one is way more important than the other one. I mean, of course, more people's lives will be affected more positively if we can do something against malaria than anything we would do with bread. On the other hand, it's not a foregone conclusion we're going to cure malaria. We're certainly going to try to do our part, but I also kind of like baking bread.
That's Vice News Tonight for Wednesday, December 6th.